Hi, hello and welcome. In this video we are going to discuss about Comic World. This Comic World will be covered in three dimensions: the origin of comic book industry, how the comic characters had an impact in our life, how these comic characters went from just pictures to pop culture icons. Comic book timelines are majorly divided into four: Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age and Modern Age. Golden Age is a time period set from 1938 to 1955. The period is commonly referred to as a golden period for comic creators and comic books. This Golden Age period is said to be at the peak for comic industry. In the late 1937 to 1938, things weren't going great for the public, as they were facing the greatest economic depression in the US history. Everything was down and they were depressed. People were upset as every other event happening around them was a step closer towards unemployment. World War II was just on its way. Until this point, comic book was just a printout made of funds collated out of newspaper clippings. During this time, a person named Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson, a writer who had worked on few fictional-based stories about military, pitches in and establishes a company named National Allied Publications. Malcolm had a greater vision. He produced a comic titled New Fun with the tagline, "The Big Comic Magazine." It was larger than any other comics of that time, sized 10 by 15 inches. It was not just the size which was different, but the strips. This 36-page magazine was an anthology series filled with humor and adventure. Most of this were written by Malcolm himself. Everything was unique, original, and newly drawn characters. This piqued the interest of the public. So Malcolm went on and added a second magazine named New Comics and called it Adventure Comics. Despite his efforts, newsstands were reluctant to stock his comics as they were experimental ventures. They preferred to sell out regular magazines and newspapers. It wasn't easy to sell out original comics, but he went on for the next 3 years. Though the approach was unique and interesting, it wasn't making enough money. He constantly faced financial crisis. Malcolm thought an experienced partner could do justice and join hands with Harry Donenfeld. In 1937, along with these two, accountant Jack Lebowitz formed Detective Comics Inc. The collaboration went for a year, and then Donenfeld arranged a cruise trip for Malcolm and his wife to think on some new ideas and ways to sort out their financial crisis. While returning, Malcolm found his office locks to be changed and was also being sued by his partner for non-payment. This forced Malcolm in selling his own company for a price to Donenfeld. National Allied Publications and Detective Comics are now owned by Harry Donenfeld. Then comes Max Gaines, official comic book father. Though Malcolm Wheeler created the first original comics, Gaines is the one being credited for it, for creating first American comic book named Famous Funnies. Gaines later on establishes his own company in 1938 and collaborates with none other than Harry Donenfeld. This was called as All American Comics. All American Comics becomes a sister concern to National Comics. Days after, now comes a dispute. Donenfeld claimed that DC logo was unofficially used in All American Comics and sued Max Gaines. Max Gaines decides to sell his share for a price to Donenfeld. Now Donenfeld owns all the three companies: Detective Comics, National Comics, American Comics. All of these becomes National Comic Publications, NCP, which will eventually become DC Comics, which we know of now, but we haven't reached there yet. In June 1938, a $130 hero appears in all the pages. Audience feels connected with this character to their current situation. A normal guy named Clark Kent uses his immense power, helps others in times of need. Yes, we are referring to none other than Superman. This comic cover, where Superman holds a car above his head to save a person, says everything about him. This character was perceived as a beacon of hope by public. Superman is the super daddy of all the superheroes. He sets up a foundation for superhero genre. The fun fact is, Jerry Siegel and Joey Shuster, creators of Superman, had already worked in New Fun comic issue number 6. At that time, they pitched the idea for this character to be a bald villain with superpowers. But considering the economic depression and dark times the people were living, they shifted the strategy and turned it to be a superhero with hope. People went crazy and fell in love with this character instantly. Superman himself struggled for 5 years to get printed on pages. On March 1939, on Detective Comic issue number 27, one more superhero is being introduced. This character is later known for his dark and broodiness. Yes, we are speaking of Batman. This superhero was often written as Detective Comics featuring Batman. Because of its significance, issue 27 is widely considered as one of the most valuable comic book in existence. In February 2010 auction, this copy was sold for $1,075,000. On the other hand, it wasn't just the Cape superheroes which got introduced by DC, but a lot of other characters. This inspired a publisher named Martin Goodman, and he founded Timely Comics in 1939, which will eventually become Marvel Comics we know today. Superman and Batman were about Cape Crusaders and superheroes. Timely Comics tried a different approach by introducing an anti-hero character named Namor in April 1939. The character revolved beneath the oceans and it intrigued people. A guy covered by flames was introduced in 1939 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. The character gets his power from outer space and gets named as Human Torch. Both these characters is loved by people. Unlike their competitor DC, these characters just did not have their own adventures but did cross very often to their respective worlds. Comic book industry was booming during Golden Age, then started World War II. The comic business went up to unimaginable heights. Timely Comics capitalized the situation. They created a costume out of an American flag. The superhero punching the Nazi boss Hitler became very popular among the public and they enjoyed it. This character is none other than Captain America himself in a comic book cover, who got introduced in March 1941 by Jack Kirby and Joey Simon. Especially during World War II, the comics were one of the greatest entertainment. It is even said that vivid newspaper readers and radio listeners got reduced due to comic book influence. People loved these creations and their world building, and it was easy to bond with these characters. During World War II, 1 out of 4 books being shipped out for military. Every soldier felt morally boosted while reading them. These issues were even specifically stamped for soldiers. Like any business, profit comes at a price. In 1945, comic companies ran into problems. People felt the stories were repetitive after World War II. Marvel and DC had to find new strategy for survival. They started producing horror, science fiction, western and other genres which helped them to evolve and get the attention of audience. Did it work? Let us continue in the next video. Hope the video was informative. Please do like and share the video. Do subscribe to this channel for support and to create contents. Click on the bell icon for instant notification. Kindly mention what sort of contents you want me to do in the commentary box. Please comment below and let me know. This is Mr. Sane signing off for the day.